How Rick Ginn taught this wholesaler how to do over 2,000 wholesaling real estate deals, and how you have done over 3,000 wholesaling real estate deals. What is up, guys? Zach Ginn here, and we are in the Bags to Riches podcast, and I haven't done this in a while, and we have a guest that, I don't know, I think you probably should have been the first guest, but you've never been on here.
That's true.
Of Rick Ginn. So I want to talk to Rick Ginn today about how he basically created his wholesaling real estate empire, doing over 3,000 wholesaling deals, and how him and I guess both of us are teaching 250,000+ people how to get in this business and learn wholesaling real estate. So what is up?
Just doing my wholesaling and living my best life. So the main thing I got into this was to have ultimate freedom, and I've accomplished it. So my goal now is to help other people, to give them light, to give them opportunity, and let them know there's bigger and better things out there if you actually want to reach for it. So I started by showing you, and then you've kind of convinced me to show everybody else, and voila, we're here.
There we go. So how did you get started in wholesaling real estate? Well, talk about your beginnings and your first wholesaling deal.
I basically had a regular job. I went to college. I did my 5.5, 6-year stint, and I never really fit in college. I enjoyed regular school, mostly sports and stuff, but I always asked stupid questions. As my teacher said, like, why do we have to learn this? Why are we learning geometry? Why are we learning algebra? And I was always told to just keep my mouth shut. I asked too many questions. So college, it really brought it home for me because I took a lot of different courses, but I did get a finance degree because I always wanted to understand money. And college helped out a little bit, but to be honest with you, I just wanted to get out. When I got out of college, I wound up just basically taking a professional sales job. So I sold boats for a little while. I thought that was my passion, and I found out how that works. I sold life insurance. It was actually a great sales training, and it taught me how difficult rejection is, and I had to overcome it. And then I actually wound up settling for a career at Enterprise Rent-A-Car because they give you the tools to be successful. And I actually wound up being there just over like 11 and a half years. And they did teach me how to look at P&Ls, not really balance sheets. And I had to learn how to multitask and talk to people. So it was a good experience. I was young. I didn't understand, but I could never get ahead. And actually, I started trying to keep up with the Joneses. I started to have kids. And I started thinking about, I'm going to have to do something because there's no way I'm going to make ends meet here. And I actually had a decent job with them. I hated every minute of it. And I didn't want to be moved all over the country. So my next move with the company was either go to California, Utah, and I believe Oklahoma. And I said, absolutely not. So I just had you, and your sister was coming along. And so I decided to make a decision. And so the only thing I did know is that people got wealthy with real estate, and that was proven over time. So then I went on a journey on like, how do I figure this out? So I started with real estate investing, and I would go to like meetup groups. There was nothing online. We didn't have social media. And I actually hopped on a plane to go to a big meetup group in Georgia, and it was their local RIA. And I met some people there, and they introduced me to wholesaling. And long story short, I fell in love with it. I'm like, you're telling me I can make X amount of dollars without really putting any money into it, and I can repeat it over and over. And I was talking to people making $50,000, $100,000 a month back in 2003. I'm just like, so I remember coming back and telling my wife about it. She thought I was a little bit crazy, but she too wanted more for our family. And so I dove head into wholesaling. And I'm going to be honest with you, I really didn't know what I was doing. The instructions were terrible back then. There was no systems. And basically, there was only two types of forms of marketing. You ready? It was direct mail, and nobody told you how to do it. And then the other, so our direct mail, to get the list, you had to go to the county because we didn't have any other sources to get it. And the other one was just good old fashioned door knocking. That's it. We door knocked pre-foreclosures, and I cut my teeth on door knocking. And actually, I was one of the first guys to go out and talk to every realtor I ever knew. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I wasted a lot of time. It was painful, but I did find two realtors that actually started sending me deals. And actually, one of my first deals, a realtor's grandmother had a house. She goes, she need to get rid of it. It's outdated. It was down in Fort Lauderdale. It was on this little place called Las Olas. Now, I was familiar with it because I fished over there as a kid. And I took a look at it. I had no idea what I was doing. And she helped me come up with a number. I wrote a contract. I had no idea if it was going to stick. I put zero money down, not one dime. And I put it under contract. And my goal was just to make $10,000. I go, if I can make $10,000, well, I left like 80 grand on the table because I didn't know what I was doing. And I sold it via assignment of contract. And here's the really cool part. The buyer that bought it from me got a traditional loan from Bank of America. Back then, you could do assignments of contracts with traditional financing. The banks didn't know anything about it. And the bottom line is he fixed it up and sold it 9 months later. It made $300,000 off of my deal. But that just inspired me. And walking around with that check and showing people and showing my wife, I was just like, man. And then I had a couple leads in the pipeline, and kind of the rest history. I went all in. And guys, I was working a full-time job when I did this whole thing. I had him running around. He was 3 at the time. And then I was just having my daughter. And I go, man, I really think I can dig myself out of this hole. Bottom line is about 7 months later, I walked in my boss's office and I fired myself. Literally just go, I don't want to work here anymore. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at me to try to get me to stay. And I said, nope, I'm very happy with what I'm doing. So what I did is I set, basically once I earned my salary in wholesaling, my job was actually a detriment to my wholesaling business. And that's when I knew I had to make the leap. Now, I've been a little bit more conservative when I did it. I had obligations, I had kids. And if you're going through that, you can burn candles at both ends. So I did nights, I did weekends, and I had a job where I could actually take my phone and take calls from sellers in a limited capacity. And I was at, once I did that first deal, I was just like, man, I can do this over and over. And so my average deal was between $5,000 and like $15,000. And I did it. I didn't do probates. Honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I just went out and found motivated sellers. And I mostly, at the time I didn't know it, but I was actually utilizing government lists. I just didn't do it on purpose. So I started mostly with pre-foreclosures and then code violations. And then I fell in with my next marketing tactics, which was bandit signs, which I did really well with bandit signs. And I used to go out in the middle of the night because I didn't want anybody to see me sticking them out. And I would stick them out from 11:30 to 1:30, 2 days a week. And I just over and over, and the calls kept coming in. I would door knock in the afternoon, and then I would network. And after I think I got about 10 or 12 deals, I'm like, that's when I really started digging in on wholesaling. But I basically cut my teeth on pre-foreclosures and pre-foreclosures and code violations. They were reliable. They got me through it. And honestly, guys, when I did that, I had no idea what I was saying to sellers. And here's the crazy part. Here's my go-to line. You ready for this? If I paid you all cash and closed quickly, what's the best price you can give me? And when they gave me a price, someone taught me, go, can't you do better? And I did it over and over. It was so cheesy, so bad. And I honestly figured out quickly, a motivated seller is just looking for you to like help them. They're not looking to beat you up on price. And that was it. And then back then we had to work with realtors a lot because comping was a nightmare. There was no Zillow. Homeowners didn't have nearly the data they have today. And that's probably one of the biggest changes I've seen. But like, honestly, I I rolled my sleeves up and I had no idea what I was doing. I just executed. I went all the way through that list no matter what. And guys, I screwed up so many deals in my first year. It was like, I didn't know if I was going to make it, but I kept going. I did it, fired my boss, one of the happiest days of my life. And that was 21 years ago, back in 2003. So
That's beautiful.
it's in the beginning, guys, you just got to get started and you just got to get some deals under your belt. It's painful. It's not perfect. But back then I had little direction, little information. And if you wanted to get information, the crazy part is wholesaling to learn it was 20 grand back then in 2003. So the barriers to entry were so high. So I would network with everyone I could do to try to figure it out because I didn't have 20 grand to spend. And that's it. That was 21 years ago. And I still love wholesaling. It is my favorite technique for taking down real estate deals. And in my opinion, is the greatest skill set you can have in all of real estate.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's crazy how you get deals back then. It was, basically pre-foreclosures and code violations. Same exact thing now. Still get deals doing that, right? But I think one thing, I think a lot of people can relate to your story starting out because you struggle a little starting out, but like working hard and you keep going, boom, you get a deal, right? So how much did you make your first year in wholesaling, right? First 365 days, right? How much did you clear?
It was over $200,000.
Yeah, crazy.
So, and honestly, the first 6 months wasn't super pretty. It might have been 50 to 75. Like I stumbled my way through it, but anybody I've ever met in wholesaling, you have to go through that struggle. If you pay for a high-end course or you learn it at freewholesaling.com, the journey is for real. Some people can't hang on for the journey. I had a lot of touch and go moments like, man, do I really want to do this? And I always thought back, I could always go back to my old job. It's there, but like, I'm tired of playing it safe. I can't keep doing this. And it was weird because you didn't have a lot of support and you never knew when the next deal was coming around the corner. And that's the unnerving thing. And that is still the same denominator I see in people today. And the biggest cure to that is just go get as many leads as you can and execute every day and just get through it. Some days are phenomenal. Some days just suck, but you have to get up every day and just keep going regardless of the outcome, because eventually you'll have more good days than you have bad days. And if you keep at it, I can tell you, I was on the verge of quitting 2 or 3 times and then I would get a monster deal and it just jacked me up. It got me all fired up. And I learned I had to figure out how not to get like so excited and not to get so down when things didn't do, and try to find that even line. And that's still a challenge today everybody has to deal with because this business is all over the board. The only thing you can control is your effort. And that's the only thing I focus on, and everything else is a distraction in wholesaling.
Yeah, completely right. A lot of success starting out, again, because you're good at finding relationships with people. But wholesaling, I'm just going to argue, is way easier back in the day. And I still believe if you start out now, it probably have the same success, right? And so if I threw you now in 2024 with the same amount of money you started, let's say the same job, a lot of people still work at enterprise. What would you do to get your first deal and make your first $100,000, $200,000?
I wouldn't change a lot. I would go straight to the government list because number one, they're free. Number two, they're the highest motivation. And the one thing I've learned being in wholesaling for 21 years, there's 2 types of wholesalers. I talk about this all the time. There's what I call sprinter wholesalers. And they're people that look good for a set amount of time. And if conditions are perfect, they look like rock stars. So I'm here to tell you, wholesaling has nothing to do with the market conditions. The market up, is it down? Wholesaling works in all markets. So what a sprinter wholesaler will do will take a market that is on the rise. So we just went through a 10-year explosion in real estate, the last 5 years out of control. Honestly, you can't do anything wrong. And they looked like just oh my God, they were so great. And the reality is they weren't really doing wholesaling. They were doing what I call speculating. And when you're buying houses 90 cents on the dollar and then selling them for like market price, you're doing realtor work, and that's not going to last forever. Well, it lasted longer than it normally does. sprinters look good for a short while, but they never learn the fundamentals on how to grow their business and how to actually survive. So a lot of people, you see all these videos coming out in 21, 20, I got killed. And you never get killed in wholesaling. Anyone who said they got killed in wholesaling didn't do it right, because we minimize risk and maximize our reward. So the only way you get killed is through speculation. Now, I've done a few fix and flips. I'm not, but wholesaling alone, if you do it right, very rarely will you lose. So I consider, after 21 years of wholesaling, I'm a marathon wholesaler. And the thing is, I'm never the fastest guy. I never make the most amount of money, but I last the longest. 21 years is a long track record in wholesaling. And what's the difference to me is I don't care if I look good or not. And so if you've ever ran a marathon, I've only done a half marathon, and it wasn't pretty, is you have to just build and get a little bit better each day. And a sprinter wants to look good. That means they're feeding their ego. They're not feeding their business. A marathon wholesaler wants to grow every day. And so I teach a marathon wholesaler to bury your ego and focus on your business. The only way you're going to survive in wholesaling is the fundamental. So back to what would I do today? I would look at a holistic approach, doing this like I want to be like Rick in the last 21 years. Well, I'm going to go to fundamentals. Go find motivated sellers. Sprinters go find people that need to sell their house and try to look good as they can. God only knows if they make any money. A marathon wholesaler will go out and, okay, I got to do the fundamentals. So think about football. It's about blocking, tackling, and running the routes. It's not pretty. Just do it. Stop trying to go out and be a superstar, Michael Irving, or like a Jerry Rice. Now I'm showing my age. But the thing is, you just got to run the route. You got to know where to turn around and catch the ball. So we all can't be Tyreek Hill and stuff like that. You just got to start with the basics. So in Pop Warner, they just teach you the basics. It's going to be the same thing in wholesaling. So get those government lists, and you're going to get resistance getting these lists. This is going to test your fortitude in wholesaling. And so if I go after like 6 or 7 government lists, I might only get 3 or 4. I'm just going to attack those lists as hard as I can. And then I'm going to continue to try to find resourceful ways to get the other list. Now, how would I attack these lists? Door knocking is not nearly as effective. I would hands down, if I'm in a local market, I'm just going to hop all over reverse driving for dollars. To me, I didn't do it. It wasn't as smart. Like, we literally knocked on the door, wasted a lot of time. I could have so much scaled my business by just doing that one thing, because it was exhausting, especially in South Florida. But, and then I would never overlook driving for dollars. That was always one of my favorite ways, because like deal 3 and 4 through 10 were all from driving for dollars, just finding ugly houses. The only difference is I'd go up and knock on the door. So I was kind of fearless, but I had a very cheesy line and it wasn't pretty. So I would attack the government list. I would do reverse driving for dollars. And my God, you guys have the luxury of virtual wholesaling, which we didn't really figure out back in the day. Reverse driving for dollars, if I had to do that, I would do cold calling for them. So my only regret when I get started is I didn't do cold calling. It was known, but it wasn't talked about. In 2003, if I did cold calling, it would have been absolutely amazing. But I just decided not to do it. Maybe I was a little bit scared, to be honest with you. But they're like, Rick, you're scared, but you go up and knock on the doors. I had no fear of knocking on the doors. And one of my biggest deals I got in the first dozen deals I got on a pre-foreclosure, I made $60,000. And the only way I would have got that deal was knock on the door. And that was one of the things that separated me from leaving my job. So today you got a lot of information. There's tons of information out there. Obviously, me and Zach share everything we can at freewholesaling.com. And no longer do you have these massive barriers to entry. The difference is everyone talks about the saturation of markets. I think saturation is more of an excuse now. The reality is a lot of people are out there trying to do wholesaling. I believe 90% of them have no idea what they're doing, and their first rejection, they don't know what to do, or they're overpaying for properties. So are there a lot of people today in wholesaling? Absolutely. But very few people are doing what the fundamentals need to be done. So I was never the fastest wholesaler. I never made the most money. But honestly, there's very few people from when I started that are still doing it today because I got better every month and I slowly got better. And then once I decided to bury my ego, I'm just going to keep growing my business. And honestly, nobody even knew my name for the first 7 years of wholesaling.
Yeah.
I was like, man, the only ones that knew it were the people that were buying properties off me and go, man, this Ginn guy, dude, he just gets deals. Like, I don't know how he does it. And people used to go with me on appointments. I would like show them. And it was so, I used to own a RIA group and I would train people. I had a room of like 15, 20 people. I literally gave them my life. And so I used to show up when we were young and they just kind of like, well, I'm so scared. It's so saturated. And I'm telling you guys, it's the same objections you hear today than I heard back in 2003. I also heard people with like fear mongering. Oh, it's going to be illegal. You better run with it while you can. So I would hands down attack the government list. The only difference is I think you have to move faster today and you got to work smarter. I was pretty reckless. To be honest with you guys, I worked off of a yellow pad and we didn't have smartphones. We just had cellular phones back then. So, but I was a beast when it came up the follow-up. It was exhausting. It was 4 to 5 hours every night, just staying on them and doing my appointments. And so I worked a lot of hours when I first did it because I didn't know what I was doing. But I wouldn't change the type of list I get. I would just move faster and I would definitely implement today's technologies because I don't know how you can operate without them. You can, but the problem is all your other competitors, if they know what they're doing, they're using it for speed to lead and they use these technologies.
Yeah. I agree 100% there, right? There's so many technologies now that, I mean, if you had back then, it'd be crazy.
Yeah.
So the next thing is that I think a lot of beginner wholesalers want to hear from you because when you talk to sellers, you're super confident. You're like really good on the phones with them. If you were talking to a beginner wholesaler or you're going to train them and they're watching this right now and they're nervous talking to sellers and, you know, they say, oh, it's easy for Rick because he's done all these deals. How do you teach somebody or how do you tell somebody who's brand new how to sound really confident talking to a seller when honestly they're nervous?
Well, you can equate it to anything else you do. So if you go back and think about any sport you did, it could be the debate club, it could be the football team, soccer, baseball. Let's face it, guys, you sucked when you started it. Like some of you were naturally gifted, but there's so many people that I see that think it's like this raw talent you're born with. It's not. It's learned. What I can tell you is everybody sucks in the beginning. I don't care where you come from. The only way to get through it and get confident is to have repetition. It's a muscle. So think about it. If you're going to work out, if you want to grow your arms, you're going to have to stress them out. It's going to hurt and you're going to have to do it consistently. The only way you do that is by discipline. So what I would do is I would track how many people I talk to on a daily basis. Now, in the beginning, you can just do practice. Most people go, no, I'll role play and practice. Guys, I see you when you role play and stuff, you get so nervous before you talk to them like me or Zach. I can already tell you haven't practiced. You have to have it so burnt in your mind because sellers know if you're confident or not. And the biggest question I get is, how do I get confident when I don't have any? You have to go out and get it yourself. And the best way to do it is just go out. So if you've never talked to sellers, just get on FSBO, get on Zillow, rip through the FSBOs and just start calling them. Just go, I'm going to call 100 and I'm going to get through it. And then I'm going to talk to Rick and Zach and I tell them my experience. And then you're going to so here's the problem. People say I'm going to call 100 and usually about the 5th or 6th call, they're like, that was terrible. I got chewed out. And see, if you don't get to the 100, you're going to keep negotiating with yourself and you're never going to get there. Listen, the reality is you call 100 people, probably about 90, 92 of them are going to crap on you. The problem is you don't know which one's which. And you can't look at it. I wish I had a magic wand to look at it. So repetition is the mother of all skills. And the more you do it. So guys, I have talked to hundreds and hundreds of thousands, probably over 1 million conversations. The first year was painful for me. And then what I noticed after about 1 year, about 6 months to 1 year, I noticed there was just the same typical objections that always came up. And then so I always had a rebuttal stored in my head. Now, I wish somebody would have trained me about the objections, guys. And there's really only 5 objections you get in wholesaling. And once you know you get it, you just know how to quickly pivot. Here's the difference. Some of you actually know the answers, and through me and Zach's training is you delay so long to respond, you look up, you throw ums and buts. And that slight delay is what creates that distance between you and a seller. And you just got to get better each time with it. You're not going to be perfect. So here's a little trick. If I'm brand new and you learn, number 1, practice, practice, practice. Practice yourself in the mirror. Go find your sister, your mom, or whatever, and then go rip through like Zillow Fizbos. Because after a while, you won't fear it. And once you get rid of the fear, which is the hardest part in the beginning, then you have to figure, okay, how do I overcome? And so you write down every objection you get, and then you'll classify them. And then you come back and get the training to learn how to respond to it. And once you do that, you're like, okay, this is just a conversation. No one's going to hurt you. And I always say, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to hang up on you, or they're going to call you a bad name. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but names never hurt me. You've got to adapt that. And then once you do that, you progress. So once you get past the fear, and once you know how to confidently respond to them, your level of confidence goes up to where like you're not worried. Trust me, I still have people throw me a curveball here and there, but for the most part, anybody I can talk to, I can handle 98% of the conversations. You know why? Because I've heard them. I've heard everything. And we all start out somewhere, and you've got to understand you have to practice, practice, practice. So start with yourself, then start with a family member, and then jump over to live leads. In fact, you can ask another wholesaler or a realtor, go, give me all your dead leads. That's what we used to practice on. Because I don't want you to go out and spend a ton of money on like really good leads and screw them up. And that's why we want you to go with government lists, because they're free. They're the most motivated. And I believe you're going to work harder if you know those 2 skill sets are there. So that's my story.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
And, we've been teaching wholesale real estate for free for 4, 5+ years now.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot of really cool stories, right? Well, what's been one of your most memorable stories of somebody coming to you and saying, oh, you changed my life? Because you get a lot, right? You got online, in person, all these things.
Yeah, I mean, we just got one last night. I looked it up. I don't know if you saw it, but she had a picture of her passport and her son. Did you see that one?
No.
And she goes, I just want to let you know, you guys have like massively changed my life. Like
Wow.
I was very hesitant. And she goes, I just took your advice. And by the way, she took the entire free route. She went through free wholesaling. And she goes, I read it like a Bible. And I went through it. I applied myself. First deal, 2 deals were painful. And she goes, after about 7-8 months, I was getting $10,000, $15,000 checks on a regular basis. And now my son's joined my business. And she goes, we made a bunch of money. And now we want to travel because we saw you and Zach traveling. And so they want to do the business remotely because they learned how to do it virtually. And I mean, we've gotten thousands of messages like that. And then the main reason I did it, and you remember this conversation, is you said, Dad, you got so much knowledge and wisdom up in your head. And, my challenge is I'm somewhat of an ADHD person. It's hard for me to organize it and put it out there, even though I know it. And then you said, listen, you know how many people's lives we can impact. I go, well, I don't want to go the guru route because you know how I feel about that. And so if I could just change the projection of someone's life, because I broke the chains in my family. And listen, guys, I'm not knocking people that have like regular jobs. If that's your choice and it makes you happy, God bless you. But I wasn't happy. I never felt right as a kid. I never felt right as an adult. And then I told my wife, I go, there's got to be more. And I was lucky enough to stumble across wholesaling. And so if I can just get them out, I got into wholesaling just for freedom. Everyone's like, oh, you got into be super rich. No, I actually did it for freedom of time. If I made the same amount of money at my job and I had freedom of my time, I would have been okay with it. But because I've helped so many people out, money's not an issue with me now. And honestly, I have the freedom of the time. I love to go fishing. So if I want to just hop on a boat, it's a good weather day, I can go fishing. My business still runs. So I just love, the stories are just phenomenal. Some of our greatest business partners are people who started out, never did a deal before. And, it continues inside of Flip with Rick Plus. And I just love direction this thing's going.
Love it too. So guys, if you want to learn wholesaling real estate for free, make sure you go to free real estate wholesaling course, freewholesaling.com. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe. We'll see you soon. This is Zach Ginn signing out.
Rick Ginn signing out.
Have a blessed one.
See you guys.